Next up, the Mac Pro. Now this one's actually pretty interesting because the story behind this was back in September I had a 6-core computer, which you can't see it hardly, but this was a NZXT Vulkan computer case, and the motherboard in it, which was an Asus, died, and when I sent the board to Asus, we had a pissy fight against each other, and eventually I got them to send me a new board. But it was a full ATX and not a micro ATX, and it had a different face or back plate on the back, and so I just never used the board. Sold the processor, which was a 1090T, for just under $150, and at the time, for just under a week, I had bought a mid-2007 20-inch iMac with a 2.4 GHz Core 2 Duo. And despite wanting to have more expandability, I sold it, and for $225, I bought a almost bone stock Mac Pro. Now, when I got it, it had 2 gigs RAM in it, and now it has 12, but let's just go ahead and go over the outside real quick. So we have dual things here. This has the stock one up there, and then down here is actually Blu Ray Burner. Over here we have the power, the headphone, the 2 USB 2.0, FireWire 400, and FireWire 800. And what I really like about these cases is pretty much it's a carryover from the G5, and they just look really clean and nice. So, go ahead and turn it around to the back. Of course, up here we have our power, and something from the G5s that's different, pretty much everything about this, is there's 5 PCI slots, but one of them is actually a double wide for the graphics card. So, good examples, I have this PC Radeon 5750 right here. Yeah, 5750. And then we have still 3 free that I've never used. And instead of 2 80mm fans right here, there's just a big, like, 120 or 140. One of those two. And just a lot cleaner. So let's go ahead and go over the graphics card. We have dual DVI. We have VGA, which for some reason doesn't like to work under Mac, and DisplayPort. And as I've done this for the other videos, I'll try to get it to focus. Okay, so it says Mac Pro. Let's do it again. Mac Pro 2.66 QX. Of course, I can't read the rest of it. It has 2x512, so this would have been 1 gig stock, a 7300 GT, 250 gig hard drive, and a super drive. And this one was assembled in the USA, so another reason I like it. Now, pretty much everything in that's changed. Actually, matter of fact, everything in the little spec label has changed. But I'll get to that in a minute. So, one thing that's cool is you have the little numbers on the side to give you the ports. But similar to the late G5, or the late 2005 G5, is on the back you get 3 USB 2.0. You get your 2 FireWire, you get your optical in and out and your analog in and out, and dual Ethernet. These were all the same ports that was on the late 05 Mac, or G5. And right here would have been like a bar that that was your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth antennas. So you wouldn't need, like on the other G5s, like the one I have, the 2 antennas that were like right here. So, one thing really cool I like about these cases is the fact that you can just swap these and you can padlock it. Something very nice. And something about the Mac Pros is they have these rubber feet on the bottom, just if you're wondering. And then of course you have your little animation, which goes this way, just telling you about the RAM. Go ahead and set this aside and finish up the rest of this video before the memory card dies out. Okay, so one thing from the G5 is you don't see any plastic door for airflow. You can just run it just how it is because they're cool like that. No, nothing wrong with the G5s. I still use mine. So, of course, you can pull this out, and I actually have SATA power or SATA cable routed up there, and the SATA cable, which something Apple never did from the factory, was include optical drives that were SATA. However, in there somewhere, there's 2 SATA ports which you can route a cable up to here, so you can do that. One thing really cool about the Mac Pros is you just pull out, there's your hard drive. You just pull out, there's your hard drive. Now the other 2 are empty, but it's just super easy and super nice to do it. And then when you lock that down, these are all locked, and so is your optical drive. So extremely cool. Whereas the G5, we only had 1 optical drive bay and 2 hard drives, which were right here. And the MDD, if you wanted expandability, this is pretty much equivalent to the MDD, where you could have dual optical drive bays and 4 hard drives. Now right here is your RAM, and in here I have 2 4 gigs, actually I believe 2 2 1 1, so that's 6 on each tray, which gives me 12 gigs RAM. This RAM was probably about like $50 total, but I upgraded over time to like 6 gigs and then 12. Oops. Something with the 2006s is they have the dual trays right here, whereas the 2008, the top one's flipped. Now, under this is the dual Xeon processors, and you can tell these take up about half the space of the big heat sinks on the other G5s. And under there are 2 Xeon X5355 processors. So they're both quad cores, so this thing has 8 core power. The Geekbench is like 9718, I want to say, something like that, and that doubled just from like 4700 on just the stock Xeons. Up here we have a PC Radeon 5750 1 gig card, and this one does require the power, and Apple was cool enough to have the 2 power cords, or 2 power plug things right over here, so if you had like some fancy graphics card, you could power both of them. Now, I don't get boot screens with OS X, and all I needed to do to get it to work was use like 3 kexts and reboot, and I can use the graphics card. So that made it a lot nicer to use Mavericks, which is actually hacked on here, which was super easy, and I can do everything my MacBook Pro can. Got lots more ports for expandability, but this thing is quiet and it's really nice for rendering videos. This thing, I can't remember the numbers on it, but I think by the time I was rendering this clip for probably the other video I just did, that was on the YouTube channel before all the Mac videos, was by the time the Mac Pro is at 100%, my MacBook Pro, which has a 2.5 or 2.4 gigahertz Core 2 Duo, was at like 34%, so really fast, and it didn't take all that long to render. So I'm off to edit these videos, and we'll have to see what's next.